Yeah, that's been relatively steady for quite a long time. Of that water, about 50%, 52% or so is used by residents, and about 21% is unaccounted, and the bulk is used by commercial industrial use. So we want to keep that in mind, the idea of 50-odd% used by residents. Now, and when we look at the unaccounted for, which is the leaks, way back in 1984, the Wellington City Council said the leaks stood at 18% of the usage. We will get in a program that will reduce those to 12% by 2005. And they had a staged reduction to 12%. In 2008, the leaks are 21%. And when I asked them why hasn't that program been introduced, they said it wasn't practicable. And you remember we had the Powerco outage. The Powerco outage was caused by leaks. The Newtown leaks in 2006 made our winter usage of water about the same as our summer usage. Leaks are a big issue in Wellington, and the council has been very slow to address that. Now this is a picture I've got recently from, looks like a picture of England, doesn't it? But, it's a picture of the low flows. Now one indication of leakage in a city is to monitor the usage of water, say at 2 or 3 a.m. and get the low flow. And this is given in litres per connection per hour. And the figures go, the red ones, which are down in the Wellington CBD area, are above over 32 litres per connection per hour. Now if you look at the litres per connection, 10 litres per connection per hour over the whole of Wellington would be 20 megalitres a day, which is a quarter of Wellington's usage. And the figures, when I read out a few figures here, 7, 20, 11, Newlands, Johnsonville West 8, Nio 13, Onslow 6, Mount Kaukau 18, Wadestown 13, Kelburn 13, Messines Road 28, Brooklyn Main 15. Now most of those places are not using much water at all. The usage in 2 a.m. is really very low residential, and there are figures that show that that is normally very low. So this is an indication of two things, particularly leaks, and we can see where pipes have been renewed, the figures are less, and where it's lower lying land, the figures are less, because in the lower lying areas the pressures are much greater from the reservoirs, and so if you have a hole, then a greater pressure, a bigger leak. So leaks are a big problem. Now that brings us to the council propaganda, which was the issue the council were telling us in the early engagement for the LTCCP, and we might remember they had Auckland and Upper Hutt at half our rate of water. They had Nelson at a third of our rate of water usage. And when they were challenged on those things, they admitted they were incorrect, even with regard to Auckland being half our usage. The City Council said in a letter to me that they had no idea where that figure came from. And that was the figure that was published for all as a sort of a jockeying us up to say, oh dear, isn't this terrible, we've got to do something about it. And then the council subsequently, when they were a bit embarrassed about this, they wrote that I can assure you, this is the Issues Resolution Officer in a letter of the 12th of May, I can assure you council is currently working on a press release which will correct figures for water consumption for Wellington. Once the information is released, I will ensure that each of the submitters to council's LTCCP who mention water consumption in their submissions is provided with a copy of the information. And that press release has never appeared. No one's been written to, as far as I know, to have the figures corrected. And then, just if we look at the propaganda was going out, that was part of the propaganda, the early engagement LTCCP. And there was also, in the Wellington City Council annual plan, already this statement, already every day more than 450 litres of water is consumed per person in Wellington, and consumption has been increasing. And that was clearly wrong. They tried to justify the consumption as being increasing by saying, oh, we meant gross consumption, not consumption per resident. But anyone who read that statement, the initial one was per resident, the whole thing looked at per resident, which was quite wrong. And then today, they have on their website, Wellington residents use about 30 million cubic metres of water each year. That's about 350 litres. So the 450's now gone to 350 litres per person per day. And that's wrong, because what Wellington City have now done is they've redefined residential consumption. And they've defined residential consumption as gross consumption minus metered commercial consumption. So all unmetered commercial, all leakage, Wellington City now defines as residential consumption. Now there's an association, the International Water Association, I've been emailing them and they've emailed me back, that is very, very non-standard. So it's particular to Wellington City, and it's to make their figures look bad, to make us look bad. And then there was another one, Wellingtonians are being urged to cut down on water use. The city residents use 400 litres of water per day. The city residents use 400 litres of water per day, more than double the national average. Now that national average is bizarre as well. There was a speech given by Jim Anderton when he was Minister of Fisheries saying the national average was 160. Well, he hasn't responded to my letter. Where did he get that figure? When you take the quality of life publication over the 12 big cities, every one of those is bigger than that so-called national average, so that doesn't make sense anyway. But Wellington City is quite happy to use it to make us look bad. In the Dominion Post, 2 of Wellington's leaders are backing debate on a user-pays water system to reduce Wellingtonians' reckless consumption. So we're talking about our reckless consumption. And Mayor Prendergast maintained metering was a proven way to encourage conservation. Well, there's no justification for that statement whatsoever. In fact, Capacity, who managed the water for Wellington, were so concerned about this sort of beat up in the media that they wrote, the 400 litres per person per day used in the media grossly overstate residential water usage in Wellington because of the commercial, industrial and visitor commuter usage. That was Capacity for Wellington. And they also included in that a graph clearly showing that the consumption was declining. So even Capacity were concerned at the debate, because that of course comes back onto them as not doing their job. And the Greater Wellington is all very much involved in this too. Van Wild's, I think water metering is highly likely at some stage in the future, the softening up process. And Peter Glensaw of the Wellington Regional Council, on television, this is what he said. The big one is our gardens. And there's really two really simple things they can do. That's what he said. They, us naughty people. They can summer-proof their garden by mulching, and they can control their hosing of their garden. And we had ideas, we had the statements from Van Wild and Murray Kennedy of Greater Wellington, 15% savings with meters. Well, if we think the 15% they're talking about, if only 52% of the usage is residential, 15% savings means 30% reduction by residents. And they haven't really thought that one through either, and that is just absolute nonsense. There's no justification. There's no figures that would suggest that would ever be the case. And then Wellington, the Regional Council on one of their websites, they say a garden hose can easily deliver 20 litres of water every minute. It's sort of on the gardening issue again. And an hour of watering can use as much water as a family of 4 would normally use on a winter's day. But then Wellington City, their web people got hold of that. Instead of saying a garden hose can easily use to deliver 20 litres of water, the Wellington City people, they said if every Wellington household turned on a garden hose for an hour a day, 70 million extra litres of water would be used. Well, that's about our daily average. So the concept that everybody turning on a garden hose for an hour, every resident or every household, is gross distortion of any actual reality. It's bizarre. And if you look at the facts, the Greater Wellington or capacity